In a world where headlines often paint a simplified picture, what if the true forces shaping global events are far more complex, driven by motives we rarely discuss openly? What if peace, in some powerful circles, is not the ultimate goal, but merely a pause in a perpetual cycle of strategic advantage and economic gain? Today, we peel back the layers of international relations, from the Korean Peninsula to the battlefields of Ukraine, to understand the hidden mechanics of global power. Consider the Korean Peninsula, a region perpetually on the brink. South Korea, yearning for reconciliation with its northern neighbor, often finds its peace initiatives met with subtle yet firm resistance from its closest ally, the United States. Why? From a transactional perspective, the answer becomes clearer. A peaceful, unified, or even just de-escalated Korean Peninsula would diminish the perceived threat from the north. And with that diminishing threat, the rationale for a substantial U.S. military presence and the significant financial contribution South Korea makes towards that protection begins to erode. It's a classic case, some argue, of a protection racket on a global scale. The U.S., in this view, acts as a global security provider, offering its military might and advanced weaponry in exchange for strategic influence and substantial payments from its allies. This isn't just about Korea. Think about the intricate dance between Iran and Israel, or the broader dynamics in the Middle East. The constant tension, the ever-present threat, ensures a sustained demand for security, and by extension, for the military hardware and strategic advice that the U.S. provides. This model, while controversial, highlights a cynical yet potent logic. Instability can be a lucrative business. Now, let's talk about Russia. Despite the rhetoric of rivalry and antagonism, a deeper look suggests that Russia, in a peculiar way, serves a vital purpose for certain US interests. The very existence of a Russian threat allows the US to exert pressure on its European allies, particularly within NATO, to increase their defense spending. This isn't just about collective security, it's about market share. When NATO members are urged to meet their 2% GDP defense spending targets, a significant portion of that increased budget often translates into purchases of US-made military equipment. Think of it as a global sales strategy for the defense industry. The perceived need for deterrence against Russia becomes a powerful catalyst for arms sales, benefiting American defense contractors and bolstering the U.S. economy. It's a complex web where geopolitical rivalries can inadvertently fuel economic engines. This perspective suggests that while conflicts are costly in human lives and resources, they also create immense financial opportunities for those positioned to provide the means of defense. The continuous cycle of threat and response, therefore, becomes self-perpetuating, driven by both strategic imperatives and economic incentives. Enter Donald Trump, a figure often described as unpredictable, yet whose actions, when viewed through a purely transactional lens, appear remarkably consistent. His approach to international relations is less about traditional diplomacy and more about the art of the deal. When he pressures NATO allies to pay more, or demands that countries like Germany increase their defense budgets, it's not just about burden sharing. It's about maximizing returns for the US. He insists that European nations buy American arms for Ukraine, for instance, isn't just about supporting an ally. It's about depleting old stockpiles and creating demand for new, more advanced weaponry. His unpredictability, often seen as a weakness, can also be interpreted as a deliberate tactic to keep adversaries and allies off balance, forcing them to react to his terms. He understands that in negotiations, leverage is everything. And sometimes, the most effective way to gain leverage is to introduce an element of calculated chaos. This jugaad approach to foreign policy, where unconventional means are used to achieve desired outcomes, resonates with a certain pragmatism often observed in our own region. It's about finding the most direct, often disruptive, path to a profitable outcome. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine offers a stark illustration of these dynamics. Both Ukraine and Russia are undeniably exhausted, their resources depleted, their people suffering. Yet, the war continues. Ukraine understandably cannot cede territory, while Russia feels compelled to continue its offensive. But what role do external powers play in prolonging this devastating conflict? The argument is made that the US, by continuously supplying Ukraine with weapons, is not merely aiding an ally but also orchestrating a massive inventory turnover. Old stockpiles are depleted, creating an urgent need for new production, which in turn stimulates the US defense industry. It's a grim but logical cycle. War creates demand, demand fuels production, and production generates profit. And where does China fit into this intricate puzzle? China, a rising global power, finds itself in a delicate balancing act. While it maintains a public stance of neutrality, its subtle support for Russia is a strategic imperative. A weakened or defeated Russia will leave China as the sole major challenger to US global hegemony, making it the next primary target for pressure and containment. Therefore, supporting Russia, even indirectly, becomes a matter of self-preservation for China. It's a geopolitical chess game, where every move is calculated, every alliance temporary, and every conflict a potential opportunity for rebalancing power. The long-term implications for global stability are immense, as major powers jostle for position, often at the expense of smaller nations caught in the crossfire. When Trump famously claimed he could end the Ukraine war in 24 hours, many dismissed it as hyperbole. But perhaps, from his transactional perspective, it wasn't a peace plan in the traditional sense, but a commercial proposition. It was about creating leverage, about demonstrating his unique ability to cut deals, and ultimately, about securing a better market share for US interests in the post-conflict landscape. His tactics, as seen in his dealings with Vietnam, suddenly announced a 20% tariff after negotiations an 11% rate, are designed to shock and awe, to force concessions, and to remind everyone who holds the cards. It creates immense uncertainty for businesses and nations alike, but for Trump, it's about proving that he dictates the terms. Ultimately, this perspective suggests that for certain powerful entities, conflict and instability are not merely problems to be solved, but rather, they are strategic assets, opportunities for profit, and tools for maintaining global dominance. Peace in this cynical view can be detrimental to the war industry, to the geopolitical chess players who thrive on tension and leverage. It forces us to question the narrative we are fed, to look beyond the surface, and to understand that in the grand theater of international relations, sometimes the most profitable business is the one that keeps the world on edge. What do you think, Yar? Are we merely spectators in a game where the rules are set by unseen hands, or do we have the power to demand a different kind of peace?